He knows he hasn't been at his best, but...
Oh, and we see a smile from Jan Nepomniachtchi.
Yeah, we do.
Okay, well, maybe... Well, he is ready. I'm not gonna think about what he's been doing in his break. He does have some tea in front of him. Very good. He is staying off the alcohol. And they're playing. What's happening?
That's right. So both sides pushing their pawns in front of their kings on the first turn. One of the most classic openings. We go into an opening. It's called the Berlin Wall. And it's called the Berlin Wall because Black's position is so hard to break down. It's so solid. I'm very surprised Nepomniachtchi is even allowing this. He's going for it because the Berlin Wall, Magnus Carlsen, he's one of the leading experts. I think he could draw this position in his sleep. He could hold this position. Nepomniachtchi, though, maybe he knows his chance has passed. He hasn't gone for the most aggressive attempt, but he's hoping beyond hope that somehow Magnus Carlsen maybe relaxes too early. I don't like the opening choice from Nepomniachtchi going into this Berlin Wall. I think he's just going to run up against that wall and fail to break it down. Magnus Carlsen, meanwhile, just advancing his knight there, attacking White's pawn in the centre of the board. Normally, lots of pieces get traded early on in the game. This is not the most ambitious start for Nepomniachtchi. I'm very surprised in a must-win situation he's allowing such a solid defence for Magnus Carlsen.
Maybe he's in the kind of realm of let it be, just play a game and see how it pans out and just abandon any attempt at putting in any effort.
That's right, but this has all been worked out, this position. OK, Nepomniachtchi very surprised by Magnus Carlsen's last move there in the world. And I did get a chance. I was part of a team. It was just a bit of an experiment. I got to play against AlphaZero, this artificial intelligence program, and I used this opening as White to make a draw. So with White, you use this opening to try and make a draw. So that's why it shocks me so much that Nepomniachtchi has entered this line.
4 pawns in nearly the same formation as each other, and OK, the pieces are being traded off. One of the things you do not want is you do not want simple positions where your opponent... It's easy for your opponent to make a move.
Have both left the board, and now with his last move, Magnus Carlsen offering this queen trade. The queens are looking at each other. Jan Nepomniachtchi says, no queen trades for you, but more important than even the queen trade is the fact that the pawns are completely symmetrical. For example, if Magnus Carlsen pushes his pawn now, look at the... OK, he does this. Look at those pawns. All of Black's pawns exactly... They're exactly copying the White structure. That means there's no chance to open up more lines. There's no way to unbalance things. Just the fact that normally symmetrical pawn structures like this mean the position is completely level. I don't think that Jan Nepomniachtchi will get anywhere near to any winning chances here. So very solid stuff from Magnus Carlsen. I don't think he has anything to complain about here.
Final match and just going all in on day 2.
It's getting close to that stage already.
But it still means that a position is easy.
That's right. Normally, especially at this level, in order to win a game of chess, you need some action happening. You need some open lines. Or you need, for example, you need a bishop in exchange for your opponent's knight. Here, both sides have exactly the same material, exactly the same pawns. Black will use a pawn to kick that rook back.
OK.
And there we see it.
There we see it. OK, so still will we see some fireworks now? Yep, it's retreated to... second square, so White is getting ready to line up the rook on the left-hand side of the board next to it. So I agree with you. I think this is going to see...
Will it be a quick draw, or will they try to play this out a little bit?
I think they'll try to play...
They will try to play it out, but this kind of chess is like it's like the vacuum cleaner has come on the board.
Gotten much attention, I have to say.
Yeah, that's right, and... there we see Black's last move. He is attacking the White Queen with his knight. I'm a bit surprised by that last decision by Magnus Carlsen. We see the queens have left the board, though. And although the green bar below the 2 players, it's slightly zoomed over to White's side, but I don't think that's enough.
Yes, it's always a good idea to play chess and just enjoy the game. OK, so we see a flurry of moves. The bishop did, in fact, take the rook, and Nepomniachtchi is trying to make progress by advancing his king-side pawns.
Double pawns on that line in front of the White king, but those double pawns aren't weaknesses. They all protect each other. Magnus advancing on the left now. Yeah, the chances of disappearing move by move for Nepomniachtchi. Also, the clock situation. Magnus Carlsen has more time than he started with. Nepomniachtchi won't be able to put pressure on the clock this game.
I mean, I think the thing is, though, you need to keep the rooks on the board if you're going to make any attempt at winning this. OK, and he has advanced the pawn on the left-hand side. I really like...
Just pushing this pawn forward 1 square. Black's knight is slightly constricted now. It cannot jump forward because it's controlled by a pawn. It cannot jump forward to this square either. It's controlled by a pawn. And likewise, it's controlled by a lot of pawns right now. So white is constricting that knight. Also, white might try to advance a pawn of his own. It's not even the finger moves, the mouse movements. It's just the looking.
My clock, the board, my clock, the board. It's gonna, that song will be stuck to my brain now.
I'm sorry.
Somebody's going to turn that into a meme now.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
We should all do it. OK, 1, 2, 3. My clock.
Which has the most things. But we have seen a set of pawns leave the board. We have seen a trade on the right-hand side there. Fair trade, pawn for pawn, but the position isn't completely symmetrical anymore. If we bring up the board just to see what's happened, Magnus Carlsen, he did try to open up the position. He's trying to force the matter. He's trying to end the game as quickly as possible by making a draw. So he pushed the pawn forward. These pawns left the board. But I don't like that decision. This pawn is doubled. We mentioned that on the same line. Black is helping white to remove a doubled pawn. And just after the capture, white moves his rook across. Maybe he wants to push this pawn forward. We've seen a couple more moves. Black pushes on the right-hand side. White improves his bishop. Still not so much going on. That's reflected in the bar in the middle there. 0.0, OK, 0.2. It's not a huge amount happening.
The pawn on the right-hand side of the board could potentially one day, in a pipe dream, make itself into an outside pass pawn.
That's right. If we, a long pipe dream.
It needs a lot of assistance.
1% chance, maybe.
Yeah. All right. Well, we know that Jan Nepomniachtchi has to win this game if he wants to equal the first semi-final day match. If it is a draw, Magnus wins, then Magnus will win day 1.
That's right. And actually, we have seen a trade. White has exchanged his own bishop for Black's knight. The more trades that happen, we've mentioned it a few times, the more trades that happen, the closer we're edging towards a draw. Magnus pushing a pawn on the left side there. White could capture it. It looks like white would win a pawn, but Black's rook will whiz across to the end and start to take those pawns.
Well, especially for Jan Nepomniachtchi then. You said it so many times, it's sometimes just about forgetting everything.
Yes, it absolutely is. Yeah, but it's easier said than done. OK, so a pawn has advanced, and so we see a flurry of trades.
That's right. A few pawns have left the board now. That left-hand side is all just starting to disappear. Jovanka mentioned it. The vacuum cleaner is out. Just hoovering up all those pawns.
Quarterfinals. He did make a comeback. He was fantastic on day 2.
So the black rook has gone to the left-hand side of the board and is now looking at an open line. So this is relatively good news, but there's so few pieces on the board. Kind
of has a threat here. It's not a huge threat, just a small one. But he's doing the right thing. Rooks need these open lines. He wants to jump down and attack the white king. Rooks are so great at covering lots of territory in one move. That rook is going to swing up the board. That rook's going to maybe give check to the white king. Therefore, white tries to distract black. He's pushing a pawn forward. He's offering more trades. And the game is fizzling out. Nepomniachtchi starting to come to terms with that.
Yeah. Who is it that will offer the draw here?
Magnus Carlsen. Maybe if he offered the draw, it might be a bit, not disrespectful, but it just might be a bit presumptuous, thinking, OK, I know this is a draw, but I'm ahead. So Nepomniachtchi, the onus is on him, I think, to make that draw offer.
And sometimes that's a bit of a difficult, perhaps a distraction. And so you're just like, OK, well, if they want to draw, we'll repeat the position 3 times.
Well, we will pay attention to that. It's not happening yet.
No, that's right. And actually, Magnus Carlsen is the one maybe playing for the win. He's the only one with winning chances here. We see Black's king is very active. Black's king on the left-hand side there. It's actually made a journey across the board, targeting one of white's pawns. And that's why white has retreated his knight to defend his own pawn on the left side there.
So, yeah, I agree with you, David. That was absolutely brilliant. You know, the king has made a brilliant jet, but it took a step backwards.
And as Jovanka mentioned, if this pawn disappears, black will be left with an unrivaled, very, very dangerous passed pawn.
The danger on the board might not be that great, but the psychological danger could be greater than the actual threat.
It looks like a pawn sacrifice for white, but it's just a trade. We have seen that happen. White's just going to capture this remaining black pawn. Everything's disappearing. The whole left-hand side of the board, all the pawns have been obliterated. And 2 pawns versus 2 pawns on the same side of the board is just a dead draw. Neither side can make progress there. Neither side can get their pawn to the end of the board.
Yeah, the only thing that I can see is that the black king has been caught on the wrong side of the board. It would be a lot more comfortable if it were on the right-hand side, looking at its own pawns, but Magnus has it under control. In fact, he is now attacking the white knight.
This time, though, the knight does retreat. It is very safe there. We don't like our knights on the edge of the board. Knights are very bad at the edge of the board. They can only cover 4 squares compared to the normal 8 squares. But on this occasion, we will see another set of pawns leave the board, most likely.
And the last game between Wesley Sonic and Nakamura, it did end in a draw, and that